In South Africa, 20% of total state expenditure is on education, one of the highest rates of public investment in education worldwide. But only 1 in 10 young South Africans qualifies for university, and of these lucky few, only 5% actually end up with a degree. This is shocking. South Africa and the world as a whole looks to its youth for its future. But here, much of the youth doesn't see a future. Officially, unemployment in South Africa is 25.7%, but the true statistic is probably nearer to 40%, and in some areas, estimates are that unemployment is as high as 70%. Children in South Africa are faced with the universal challenges of gangsterism, drug abuse, discrimination, and injustice.
My mother has to support all of us. There are 13 people that live in this house and only 2 works. In Sambaramachal, there is no progress. People here are not educated, they don't have matric, there's no jobs here. Sometimes I just feel like I'm alone in this planet, there's no one to help me.
Ek was 'n slagoffer van molestering vir 9 jaar gewees. Ek het soos 2 jaar terug besluit om eers 'n keer daaroor te praat. Ek het 'n saak gemaak en op die ou end het ek dit teruggetrek omdat daar nie genoeg sport vir my was nie.
My mom didn't work and then it made me feel sad, unhappy, because then I have nothing to eat and I can't work. Then my stomach pain. Mama said if you don't eat in the morning, then you don't come to school. Because you also won't be able to do your work. You will just sit in class and do nothing.
Getting a job and becoming a contributing part of society is but a pipe dream. It is often assumed that the only place to get an education is in school. True, to an extent. But as the saying goes, it takes a whole community to raise a child.
Education is an enormously complex social issue.
The child spends 20% of his time actually at school. The other 80% of his awake hours, he's in the community, in the homes. And that is where we need to make an impact and make a difference so that the 20% becomes more fruitful.
The kids just face so many obstacles at home. These kids aren't supported outside of school, as well as in school.
As far as hy is het in sy mag om te eet, dan struggle hy baie om sy skoolwerk te doen. Maar hy gaat niet op sy knieën en bid vir die Here. En die Here vat jou honger te weg van hom.
Op daai tyd toe ons deur alles gegaan het, het ek my beste gegee, maar ek kon nie presteer nie. Ek het vir lank het ek stil gebly en my emosies het opgehoop. Almal het gesê ek se ticking bomb wat enige oomblik gaan explode. Ek het glad nie opgelet op my skoolwerk. Ek het my vuiste stukkend geslaan by die huis. Ek het die lewe in my oë verloor. Probeer maar wegbly van die groter groepe af. En om in te pas, is 'n groot challenge. Ek meng nie maklik met ander mense nie. En ja, ek het dus alles uitgesluit uit my lewe uit.
The hard times that Jeanette goes through is, you see, because of I'm a single mother, I'm not working, her father doesn't support her, so she only gets what she wants when I've got money, like December.
Last term, when my dad was like ignoring me and he didn't want to talk to me and all that stuff, like I will be at school and I'll write, and then my friends will just see me crying. So it did stress me and I didn't perform well at school, and one of my teachers asked me if what's happening in my life.
You know, the key is learning to read can affect your self-esteem, but not having, you know, a well-developed sense of self is going to affect how well you learn to read. This demands many inputs, you know, to help a child succeed all along the way.
So integrated services are essential. If a teacher knew about the different challenges inside and outside of school a child is facing, then that teacher will be more able to effectively deal with a distracted or disruptive child. Every aspect of a child's life is connected.
The task is so big that it requires a huge team of people to be involved. And so no church, no NGO, no policeman can do it on their own.
I think the first step is everybody getting on the same page, being in agreement on what success looks like for our young people. How do we each individually feed into that? And then how do we partner to plug our holes and make sure that we're offering complete services that actually get to every child?
We, as teachers,
not on our own, but with communities, we have the power to turn things around.
For me, there's a lot of dull and gloom.
Family structures have been broken down within communities. There's rampant crime, unemployment rates are through the roof, and schools are trying to provide quality education in the middle of all of this. And it becomes quite difficult for them to remove themselves from the home circumstances and then focus on the academics.
The biggest challenge that the kids face, if you ask them, they will say that it's boredom.
I don't actually go every day outside because they're robbing outside, because they want money and they have nothing to do.
Violence is glamorized in our society.
They are faced daily with gang wars and every type of social evil. That's the fight for survival.
I think the children are naughty because they come to school with all the stress and they take it out on other children and the teachers, and they lose concentration.
Dus die kommunikasie tussen kinders en hulle ouers het baie weggeraak.
I think the system lets children down and fails children, and children are slipping through the cracks.
Waar ek gedink het die mense gaan my help, het hulle my nie regtig genuine gehelp nie. Want hoekom gee jy vir iemand 'n saak as hulle nie daai persoon eintlik kan help nie? Hulle het nooit vir my gevra of ek okay is nie. Polisie mense het ook altyd gesê hulle gaan kom incheck op my en hulle het nooit.
The children lose trust in everyone, and trying to rebuild that trust is a long process, exacerbated by the abuse that has already taken place. Then, to make things worse, the child has also failed at a systemic level where intervention should take place, but doesn't. 50 years of apartheid methodically broke communities down. The education system was designed to create hewers of wood and drawers of water, a permanent underclass, so to speak, who would do the heavy lifting for the white minority. 3 generations of people were taught nothing more than basic literacy and numeracy. Inequalities were built into every corner, nook and cranny of society, and the effects, both economic and societal, are long-lasting and run deep. There are organizations tackling these effects. To name but a few, Life Choices trains learners to be peer educators, guiding their fellow learners. Ubunye is an umbrella organization for groups providing mentoring. The South African Education and Environment Project, among other things, provides early childhood development support. The Shine Centre promotes literacy. Grassroots Soccer targets HIV/AIDS through soccer. The Quaker Peace Centre teaches a culture of non-violence. And Yabonga empowers children, women and men how to live positively in the context of poverty and HIV/AIDS. From time to time, we try to arrange intervention from NGOs, but the only one who's permanent in our school for the last 2 years is the Life Choices group. And we have seen the change in learners in terms of their maturity, their discipline at school, and it obviously impacts on their schoolwork.
Life Choices has empowered me. It's my other second family. Life Choices has taught me that, you don't have to do things in order to fit in. If I have problems, I can always talk to my facilitator and she'll guide me all the way, and they're just teaching me how to make a difference in my community.
Progress is being made with some children, like Jeanette, feeling empowered to take charge of their own lives. But others, like Letitia, are still struggling since much of the work being done is disconnected, with each organisation working in its own context, facing its own challenges and moving forward in isolation.
I think for organisations, they struggle to collaborate together because of time. We have our own goals, we have our own funders to speak to.
I often find that they are already overextended.
We're sitting each one in our own little offices trying to solve the problem.
There is many organisations doing fantastic work, and the funding pool is relatively small.
And that pie needs to be spread amongst a lot of people.
We don't know who else is working. We hear about them, but there's no coordination.
The answer is for us to work together, but we do need a catalyst.
Sometimes we are having problems that we can't deal with, and then we can refer our children to them.
I think the best outcomes one has is when one networks in that community. So community development workers in that area. You have contact with at least one policeman in a police station. Young people don't exist in a vacuum.
At the end of the day, it is not just about a single facet of a child's life. Everything must be incorporated to bring that child's education the whole round trip.
'n Kind tikkel miskien in die klas of sy het gedragsprobleme en dan kom 'n mens uit agter maar daar's nou 'n klomp ander goetertjies wat nie in plek is nie. Byvoorbeeld mediese probleme.
They're not compartmentalized. Violence leads to drug abuse leads to violence.
Our focus is to collapse the fences, so to speak, and to open up the school so that the broader community and the school become synchronized and not as separate entities.
What we really striving to do is build a web of care.
I would certainly relish the opportunity to be able to network with others.
We form an alliance so that collectively we can assist our children.
En ek is 'n sieklike mens. Ek kry die epileptiek siekte. Daar's dae wat ek my lewe bevat. Dan dink ek genoeg is genoeg. Ek kry te swaar. Ek kan dit nie meer vat nie. Maar dan dink ek aan Paris. Hy gaan nog skool. Hy het my nog baie nodig.
There are existing partnerships between individual organizations which is helping, but it's merely a drop in the ocean and more is needed.
We partner with a lot of programs to supplement what we do and support our program in what we cannot do.
We call on government services in terms of the day hospital and the nurses who are aligned to the school. We would call on them if we have specific problems.
I'm definitely in contact with other organizations that deal with abuse, only if that's a speciality.
I work with the Early Childhood Development Organization, and it's run by Eric Atmore, and he's very much my mentor. So I go to him and he really advises me about issues around sustainability, issues around training, how to budget.
Sometimes we are dealing with those alcoholic parents that are abusing their children when they are drunk. And then we are referred them to FAMSA for family counseling.
Now that we've identified that we need to tear down the barriers, how do we do it? Practically now, how do we get those relationships going?
I think a good way of building the relationships between the NGOs would be an indaba. All the NGOs could present what they do, how they deal with it, and perhaps set up formal practices.
It helps to have someone to coordinate because it's the easiest way to communicate with those organizations.
It can't be dominated by any one of the role players. It's got to be an outside organization, I think, that actually is that catalyst.
Often that's just what's lacking. You just need that person to have the energy to put the group together, to facilitate the meeting, and to keep things on track.
So it's imperative that organizations, NGOs, and do establish some kind of forum.
To truly mitigate children's circumstances, there needs to be support from birth to adulthood in terms of their health, their home life, their education, and their career prospects. This holistic impact will make what happens within the school much more effective.
I think we all know intuitively, when we say things like a hungry child can't learn, we know that, a child who's in an abusive situation at home is going to struggle to learn. I think we know that. But actually putting that down and quantifying it, and being able to say, it affects this much of their learning or this aspect of their learning, that's something I think that right now we really, quite frankly, struggle to do.
By bringing the organizations and civic infrastructure together, knowledge is shared and a clear and complete picture of what's going on in a child's life is created. What the child is facing, to what extent, and how each organization feeds into identifying the optimal intervention strategy for helping that child learn. With strong quantitative data and all organizations on the same page, South Africa will have communities that are geared towards the success of their young people.
Amandla really wants to focus on the quality of services offered by the organizations in the community who are working with us. You have a lot of amazing organizations run by, talented, dedicated people, but the service itself, perhaps isn't geared towards gathering the type of information that one really needs to know if your results.
Amandla's goal is to be the catalyst that convenes groups and makes partnered and cohesive work possible. Amandla addresses the root causes and not only the symptoms of issues in society. Through this, building strong organizations driven by concrete knowledge and true relationship with stakeholders and local communities.
You know, in life, you are nothing without education. That's one thing I can say. If you don't have education, then who's going to hire you? Who are you going to work for? You might as well do nothing, because I believe if many people had education, many things wouldn't happen today.
Ek wil genuen aan die mense help. Ek meen, as ek dit na skool kan doen, sal ek. As ek sien iemand kry huil of iets, onmiddellik wil ek net weet of ek in enige manier kan help.
I wish I had my own house. And I had my own car. I had my own shop. And I was an actress. And I wish I could make movies.